John Miller never expected his routine maintenance job to end up like this. The space station's teleportation system had been acting weird all week, but that was normal for tech that connected human and alien sectors. What wasn't normal was ending up in what looked like a princess's bedroom. The room sparkled with crystal decorations that caught the light of 3 moons shining through massive windows. Silk-like curtains in deep purple floated in the artificial breeze, and the bed, if you could call the floating platform a bed, was bigger than his entire quarters back on the station. "Oh man, this is bad," John muttered, checking his teleporter device. The screen showed only static. He was stuck here, wherever here was, and definitely not authorized to be in this space. His heart pounded as he looked for an exit. The bedroom door was locked with some kind of alien tech he'd never seen before. Strange symbols glowed on its surface, pulsing with a soft blue light. John's engineering background told him not to mess with unknown technology, especially in what was clearly a high-security area. Pictures on the walls showed a tall, blue-skinned alien female with striking silver eyes and markings that seemed to shimmer. She wore elaborate royal clothing and stood next to older aliens who must be her family. Great, John thought. Not just any alien quarters, royal alien quarters. He heard voices in the hallway and ducked behind a floating chair. 2 guards walked past, their heavy footsteps echoing through the door. John held his breath until they passed, then let it out slowly. He needed to find a way out before someone found him here. That's when the door slid open with a soft hiss. The alien princess from the pictures walked in, even more stunning in person. Her silver eyes widened at the sight of him, but instead of screaming for guards, she smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile, more like a predator finding something interesting in its territory. "A human male," she said in perfect English, her voice musical but with an edge of authority. "How fascinating. We so rarely get your kind in the royal palace." She walked closer, her movements graceful and dangerous. "Especially not in my private chambers." John backed away, hands raised. "Your Highness, I can explain. There was a teleporter malfunction. I'm just a maintenance worker. If you'll let me leave, I'll forget this ever happened." The princess reached past him and touched a panel on the wall. The door slid shut with a definitive click. "Leave?" she laughed softly. "Oh no, my unexpected guest. You're not going anywhere." Her eyes glowed brighter as she circled him slowly. "Do you know how boring it gets, being a royal princess? Always the same faces, the same conversations, the same tired customs." She stopped in front of him. "But you're something new, something different." John's back hit the wall. The princess leaned closer, studying his face. "I think we're going to have a very interesting conversation about how exactly you got in here." And then she smiled again, showing perfect white teeth. "Then we'll see what other entertainment you might provide." The sound of her locking the door echoed in the room, and John realized his simple repair job had just become much more complicated. Princess Carissa watched the human with growing amusement. She had never seen one up close before, and this specimen was particularly interesting. His work uniform was stained with grease, and his hand showed signs of manual labor, so different from the polished nobles she usually dealt with. "You humans are considered quite exotic here," she said, floating gracefully on her hover chair, while John remained pressed against the wall. "Some of our people collect pictures of your species, like rare artwork." Her silver eyes sparkled. "But to have a real one in my chambers, that's much better than pictures. I'm not some kind of collectible," John protested, though his voice shook slightly. "Look, there has to be some diplomatic channel we can use. I work for the Human-Alien Cooperation Project. They'll verify my identity." The princess laughed, a sound like crystal wind chimes. "Diplomatic channels. Those old men would have you executed just for breathing the same air as royal blood." She leaned forward, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with interest. "Besides, I find this situation far too entertaining to end it so quickly." A loud knock at the door made them both freeze. "Princess Carissa, Your father demands your presence in the throne room immediately." Krissa moved with surprising speed, pushing John toward her massive closet. "Get in," she whispered, "and try not to touch my ceremonial robes. They're worth more than your entire space station." John found himself surrounded by floating garments that seemed to shift colors in the dark. Through a small gap, he watched as Krissa opened her door to face an imposing guard with metallic scales for skin. "What's the emergency?" she asked, sounding perfectly calm. "The Zarkian Council has convened. Your father is announcing the marriage candidates." John saw Carissa's shoulders stiffen. Marriage candidates? That wasn't supposed to happen for another cycle. "Times change, Princess. The political situation requires immediate action. Prince Vorthak of the Drone Hives has made an offer that the king cannot refuse." Carissa's markings flashed red for a moment. Anger, John guessed. "Tell father I'll be there shortly. I need to change into proper attire." After the guard left, Krissa pulled John from the closet, her face tight with worry. "This complicates things. Vorthak is a monster who turns his wives into mindless drones. I have 3 days to either choose a mate or have one chosen for me." "That's horrible," John said, actually feeling sorry for her despite his situation. "But what does this have to do with me?" A calculating look crossed her face. "Maybe everything. Our laws say I must choose a mate of noble blood or someone who proves their worth through great deeds. Most importantly, it must be my choice." John didn't like where this was going. "Your Highness, I'm just a maintenance worker who somehow breached the most secure palace in 7 galaxies," she finished. "That's either great skill or great luck. Either way." She touched a panel on her wall, and a hidden door appeared. "Stay in here while I deal with this. We're not done talking." The hidden room was small but comfortable, with its own floating bed and food synthesizer. John sat down heavily, his head spinning. First a teleporter malfunction, now he was caught up in alien royal politics. Through the thin walls, he heard the palace announcement system activate. "Attention all citizens. In 3 days' time, Princess Krissa will announce her chosen mate. Let the proving ceremonies begin." John buried his face in his hands. Somehow, his simple repair job had turned into a galactic-scale mess. And judging by the gleam in the princess's eyes earlier, she already had plans for him. Plans that probably wouldn't end well for anyone involved. In the distance, he heard ceremonial horns blowing, announcing the beginning of what would surely be the strangest 3 days of his life. Krissa returned to her chambers looking exhausted, her usual luminescent glow dimmed. Her elaborate royal dress seemed to weigh her down as she collapsed onto her hover chair. John emerged cautiously from the hidden room, surprised to find himself worried about her. "That bad?" he asked. "Worse," she said, her markings pulsing a deep blue. Prince Vorthak brought his previous wives to the ceremony. Their eyes were empty, John. No thoughts, no will of their own. Just perfect, obedient drones. She shuddered. "That's what they want for me. Can't you just refuse? And start a war? The drone hives have been looking for an excuse to attack us." She stood suddenly, pacing the room. "But maybe we can help each other." John crossed his arms. "I'm listening." "Our laws are ancient and complicated," Krissa explained, pulling up a holographic text that floated between them. "A princess can choose any mate who proves their worth through 3 trials. It's meant for noble warriors," but her silver eyes gleamed. "You're an engineer. You understand systems, how things work. You want me to compete in these trials?" John asked incredulously. "Against alien warriors." "I want you to help me expose Vorthak's corruption," she corrected. "The trials are just a cover. My sister Tilio works in the palace archives. She's found evidence that Vorthak's been experimenting with forbidden mind control technology. If we can prove it." A loud bang interrupted them. The teleporter on John's belt suddenly sparked to life, its display showing random coordinates. "That's not good," John muttered, trying to shut it down. "The malfunction's getting worse." Krissa grabbed his arm. No, this is perfect. The teleporter. It could get us into Vorthak's private labs. All we need is... Another bang, louder this time. The teleporter's light engulfed them both. For a terrifying moment, John felt his atoms stretching across space. They rematerialized in a dark corridor. Warning lights pulsed red along the walls, and strange mechanical sounds echoed from somewhere nearby. Chris's markings glowed brightly, illuminating their surroundings. "This isn't my target coordinates," she whispered, looking around. "This is the old wing of the palace. It's supposed to be abandoned, but..." A scream echoed through the corridors. Not of pain, but of someone's will being stripped away. Krissa grabbed John's hand, pulling him into a shadowy alcove as heavy footsteps approached. Two guards walked past, dragging an unconscious alien between them. Through their transparent helmets, John could see their eyes. Vacant, just like Krissa had described. "They're all drones," Krissa breathed, her hand tightening around John's. "Vorthak's been building his army right here in the palace." The teleporter sparked again, threatening another jump. John tried to disable it, but the controls were locked. "Whatever we're going to do," he said urgently, "we need to do it fast. This thing could send us anywhere next." Krissa's markings pulsed with determination. "Then we better find what we need before that happens." She pulled out a small device. "My sister gave me this. It can detect the energy signature of Vorthak's mind control technology. We just need proof." The teleporter hummed ominously. They had minutes, maybe seconds. "Your Highness," John said, making a decision. "If we survive this, I accept your deal. But right now, we need to move." They crept deeper into the dark corridor, following Tilia's detector, racing against both the malfunctioning teleporter and the approach of more drone guards. Whatever they were about to discover, it would change everything, if they lived long enough to reveal it. The moment John and Krissa turned the corner, they walked straight into a patrol of drone guards. Their blank eyes showed no recognition, even of their princess, as they raised their weapons. "Run." Krissa shoved John down a side corridor, her royal dress transforming into sleek battle armor. John gaped at the transformation, but there wasn't time for questions. Energy bolts sizzled past their heads as they sprinted through the abandoned wing. In here, Krissa yanked open a hidden panel, revealing a maintenance shaft. As they crawled through, John heard her muttering, "These tunnels connect the whole palace. Servants used them centuries ago, before teleporters." The shaft ended in what looked like an old laboratory. Dusty equipment lined the walls, and in the center stood a massive machine, its core pulsing with sickly green energy. "That's it," Krissa whispered, checking her detector. "This is where Vorthak's been developing his mind control technology." She moved closer, her markings reflecting the green glow. "Look at these readings. He's been amplifying the effect, trying to extend its range." John examined the machine with his engineer's eye. "These power curves, he's not just planning to control his wives. This could affect the entire palace. The whole city," Krissa corrected grimly. During the marriage ceremony, when everyone's gathered to watch, her voice trailed off as heavy footsteps echoed from above. The teleporter on John's belt chose that moment to spark again. "Your Highness, we need to move. This thing's getting more unstable." But Krissa was already at a computer terminal, downloading data. "Almost done. This is everything we need to prove what Vorthak's planning." The ceiling hatch burst open. Drone guards dropped down, surrounding them. Through the opening appeared Prince Vorthak himself, tall, pale, with cybernetic implants covering half his face. "Princess Krissa," he said, his voice artificially smooth. "I see you found my workshop," and his mechanical eye focused on John. "Brought a human pet. How quaint." "These are my ancestors' halls," Krissa said, her voice regal despite their situation. "You've corrupted them with your foul experiments." Vorthak smiled. "Corrupted? I'm evolving them, just as I'll evolve you, my dear. Your strong will makes you perfect for my next advancement in drone technology." John noticed Krissa slowly shifting her weight, her hand moving towards something on her belt. He kept talking, trying to distract Vorthak. Your machine's got a critical flaw in the power distribution. These readings show it's already unstable. A maintenance worker dares critique my work. Vorthak laughed. Your human arrogance is amusing. After the ceremony, perhaps I'll keep you as a specimen. Study how your primitive mind responds to my improvements. The teleporter hummed louder. Krissa caught John's eye and mouthed, "Ready? Your improvements." John scoffed, edging closer to Krissa. "I've seen better wiring in ancient Earth toasters." Vorthak's cybernetic eye glowed red. He raised his hand, and the drone guard stepped forward. That's when several things happened at once. Krissa threw down a sphere that exploded in blinding light. The teleporter surged, its field expanding, and John felt Krissa grab his arm as they both jumped, not toward the exit, but straight at Vorthak's precious machine. The world dissolved into chaos. The last thing John saw was Vorthak's face contorted in rage as the teleporter field engulfed them all, the machine's green energy mixing with the teleporter's blue glow in a way that defied physics. Then everything went white. The teleporter malfunction combined with Vorthak's machine had unexpected consequences. John and Krissa materialized in the middle of the royal throne room, right during a full court session. Krissa's father, the king, sat on his crystalline throne, surrounded by hundreds of noble aliens, and with them appeared the machine's core, sparking and unstable. Vorthak materialized moments later, his cybernetic implants crackling with energy. "Seize them," he roared, but his voice had changed. The mechanical smoothness was gone, replaced by static-filled rage. Krissa stepped forward, her battle armor gleaming. "Father, honored court, look at Prince Vorthak. Look at what he's become." She held up the data crystal containing their evidence. "He's been experimenting with forbidden technology, turning our people into mindless drones." The court erupted in chaos. Noble aliens backed away from Vorthak, their bioluminescent markings flashing in alarm. The king rose from his throne, his markings pulsing deep red with anger. "These are serious accusations, daughter," he said, his voice thundering through the hall. "And you bring them with a human by your side." "John helped me uncover the truth," Krissa declared. "While our noble courts were blind to corruption, this maintenance worker showed more courage than all our warriors combined." The machine's core pulsed dangerously. John's engineering instincts screamed warnings. "Your Highness," he called out, "that core's going critical." The teleporter damage combined with the power surge. "It's going to overload." Vorthak laughed, a horrible mechanical sound. "Perfect. Let it overload. My drone signal will blanket the entire palace. Everyone here will join my collective." The drone guards moved in, but something was wrong. Their movements were jerky, uncoordinated. The machine's malfunction was affecting their control signals. Krissa's younger sister Talia burst into the throne room, clutching ancient scrolls. "The archives," she shouted. "I found records of this technology. It was banned because it couldn't be controlled. The more mind it tries to capture, the more unstable it becomes." The core's pulsing reached a fever pitch. Vorthak's cybernetic implants sparked violently, and his drone guards began collapsing. "John," Krissa grabbed his arm. "You're an engineer. Can you stop it?" John was already moving toward the core, his mind racing through calculations. "Maybe, but I'll need help. The containment field needs to be modified, but the controls are in alien tech." "I'll help." Talia rushed to his side, her knowledge of ancient technology proving invaluable. Krissa stood guard, her battle armor's weapons keeping the increasingly erratic Vorthak at bay. The king watched in amazement as human and aliens worked together to prevent catastrophe. The core's housing had been designed to channel energy for mind control. John and Talia worked to reverse the flow, turning it into a containment field instead. Sweat poured down John's face as he rerouted power connections, while Talia's fingers flew over alien control panels. "Everyone down," John shouted as the core reached critical levels. He made one final connection, and the machine's green energy imploded, sucking in its own field. Vorthak screamed as his cybernetic implants overloaded. The drone guards collapsed, their control signals broken. And in the sudden silence that followed, Krissa stood tall before her father's throne. "The evidence is clear," she said, her voice carrying through the stunned court. "Vorthak betrayed our laws and our people, and a human helped save us all." The king raised his hand for silence as nobles began shouting. His silver eyes studied John thoughtfully. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "it is time for our kingdom to reconsider more than just our marriage laws." But before he could continue, John's damaged teleporter hummed back to life. "No," Krissa reached for him, but the teleporter field was already forming. "Father, stop this." The last thing John saw was Carissa's desperate face as the teleporter pulled him away, leaving chaos in the royal court behind him. John rematerialized in a cold, dark cell. The teleporter fell from his belt, finally dead. Through the energy bars, he could see other cells filled with aliens, the real palace guards, not drones, their markings dim but their eyes alert. "The human lives," a familiar voice said. Talia appeared outside his cell, her royal robes replaced by simple clothing. "Good. We'll need you." "What's happening? Where's Krissa?" "Fighting for both our people." Talia disabled the energy bars. "Vorthak's followers have seized parts of the palace. They're demanding he be restored to power, claiming alien corruption by human influence." The palace shook with distant explosions. Talia led John through hidden passages, explaining as they moved. "Krissa's called for an emergency royal trial. All evidence will be presented before the High Council. But Vorthak's supporters—" She paused at a junction, checking for patrols. "They're desperate. The machine may be destroyed, but some of his experimental technology survived." They emerged into a vast circular chamber. Thousands of aliens filled the tiered seating, their markings creating a constellation of shifting colors. In the center, Krissa stood proudly, facing down a dozen royal judges. "The human corrupted our princess," Vorthak's chief scientist was saying. "They plan to steal our technology, weaken our defenses." "Let the human speak," Krissa's voice rang out. "If we claim to be an advanced civilization, let us hear all voices before judgment." The crowd parted as Talia led John to the center. He could feel thousands of alien eyes studying him, but he focused on the judges. "I'm just a maintenance worker," he began. "I fix things. That's all I've ever done. When I saw Vorthak's machine, I didn't see advanced technology. I saw something broken, something that broke people." He pointed to his dead teleporter. "This malfunction. It brought me here by accident. But what I found wasn't an accident. The experiments, the drones, the plans for mass control, those were choices, evil choices, made by someone who saw your people as things to be fixed, not people to be respected." The chamber erupted in shouts as John pulled out something from his pocket, a small crystal he grabbed from Vorthak's machine during the chaos. "This contains the original code, not corrupted by experiments. It proves the technology was never meant for control, but for healing. Your ancestors created it to help people communicate, to bring minds together in understanding." Vorthak twisted it into a weapon. Krissa stepped forward, her markings bright with triumph. "The human speaks truth, and there's more." She raised her hand, and the chamber's displays lit up with recovered data. "These are Vorthak's real plans, not just control of our kingdom, but weapons to use against all species he considered inferior, including his own people." The judges' markings pulsed as they communicated silently. The head judge stood. "We have seen enough. Vorthak and his followers will face justice. As for the human—" But another explosion rocked the chamber. Through a breach in the wall, heavily armed figures emerged. Vorthak's loyal soldiers, wearing prototype control devices. "If we cannot rule," their leader growled, "then none shall rule. Fire the pulse." Everything seemed to move in slow motion. John saw the device powering up, recognized the fatal flaw in its design. Without thinking, he grabbed Carissa's ceremonial sword and threw it like a spear. It pierced the device's core. The resulting feedback knocked out every piece of Vorthak's technology in the chamber. The soldiers collapsed, finally free from control. Silence fell. The head judge spoke again, but now with something like awe. "It seems we have witnessed a great deed, one worthy of legend." He turned to Carissa. "Princess, the choice of your mate remains yours, as tradition demands. But know that today, worth has been proven not by blood, but by actions." Carissa smiled, her markings glowing brighter than ever. But before she could speak, the ground began to shake. This was no explosion. The entire palace seemed to be shifting, responding to some ancient protocol awakened by the day's events. The true trial was not yet over. The ancient palace mechanisms groaned as hidden chambers opened beneath the trial room. The floor turned transparent, revealing a vast network of crystalline machinery pulsing with pure energy. The kingdom's true heart, the ancestors' core, Carissa breathed. "It's awakening." The head judge fell to his knees. The legends were true. The core activates only in times of great change, when our civilization must evolve or perish. Light erupted from the core, enveloping Carissa and John. In that moment, they shared a vision of the kingdom's past. The original peaceful alliance between species, the corruption that led to isolation, and a future that could be. "The ancestors didn't build walls," Carissa announced, her voice resonating with new authority. "They built bridges. Our kingdom wasn't meant to stand alone, but to unite different peoples, different species." The core's energy spread through the chamber, its light revealing hidden truths. Noble aliens who had supported Vorthak found their corruption exposed. Those who had fought for justice saw their deeds illuminated. John felt the energy course through him, not changing him, but revealing something the ancestors had known. That worth wasn't measured by species or blood, but by actions and heart. The king descended from his throne, his markings shifting to match the core's rhythm. "The ancestors have spoken. Our isolation ends today." He turned to John and Carissa. "My daughter, your choice was wiser than any of us knew. The human didn't just save our people from Vorthak. He helped us save ourselves from our own prejudice." Carissa stepped forward, glowing with newfound purpose. "Father, honored council, our laws must change. Not just about marriage, but about everything. We've hidden behind tradition while the galaxy moved forward. It's time we did the same." The core pulsed in agreement. Ancient holographic displays activated, showing scenes from across the galaxy. Other civilizations working together, thriving through unity rather than isolation. "Let this be our first act of change," Carissa declared. She turned to John, her silver eyes bright. "John of Earth, you came here by accident, but you stayed by choice. You fought for people not your own. Risk your life for our kingdom. I choose you, not just as a mate, but as a symbol of the future we must build." John took her hand, feeling the core's energy flow between them. "I'm still just a maintenance worker," he said with a smile. "But maybe that's what your kingdom needs, someone who fixes things." The chamber filled with light as the core registered their union. But this was more than a royal marriage. It was the beginning of a new era. The kingdom's borders would open. Knowledge would flow freely again. The mistakes of the past would be learned from, not hidden away. Talia stepped forward, carrying ancient scrolls that glowed with core energy. The ancestors left instructions for this day: technology to heal, not control; wisdom to unite, not divide. And a warning: change brings chaos, but stagnation brings death. The core's light dimmed, its purpose fulfilled. But its energy remained, humming through the palace's crystal walls, a constant reminder of this new path. Carissa addressed her people one final time. "Today marks not an ending, but a beginning. Let us honor our past by building a better future, together." As cheers filled the chamber, John squeezed Carissa's hand. He'd come to fix a broken teleporter and ended up helping fix a kingdom. Maybe some accidents were destiny after all. And somewhere in the depths of space, a new signal began broadcasting. The kingdom was open again, ready to rejoin the galactic community. The age of isolation was over. The age of unity had begun.